Hello, podheads, and welcome back to another episode of Over My Dead Pod. I'm Kylie Colwell,
And I'm Holly Spear.
and while Kate's gone, I figured we'll do something a little different, and I wanted to bring a different perspective to a case that I think many already have a perpetrator in mind. When I first heard the story, I was like, oh, I know who did it, but now, taking another look, I'm not convinced. So listen along to the mysterious disappearance of 7-year-old Kyron Horman and let me know what you think happened. On June 4th, 2010, the Horman family walked from their house to the bus stop to pick up Kyron, as they did every day after school around 3:30 p.m. Dad Kane walked with his wife Terry, who was holding their 18-month-old baby girl. The bus stopped, kids got off, but not Kyron. Kane and Terry asked the driver where Kyron was, and all he could respond with is that Kyron never got on the bus, suggesting to call the school. There wasn't an immediate panic because Terry had actually dropped Kyron off at school that morning instead of him taking the bus as usual. So the thought was, oh, maybe, he got confused and thought he was going to be picked up as well. I know I did that several times or got on the bus after school, forgetting that my parents were supposed to pick me up and take me to a dentist appointment. It happens.
I can see it.
So they all get in the car and head to the school, on the way calling the school secretary to confirm that that is what happened. But no, Secretary Susan Hall said Kyron wasn't there. In fact, he had been marked absent from school that day. Now they're panicking and just confused. Terry walked him into the school and even talked to his teachers. Kane starts driving faster. Meanwhile, Secretary Susan calls 911 to report Kyron Horman as missing. After this call was made, Susan called Kyron's mother, Desiree, to let her know what was happening. So if you caught that, Terry is not Kyron's biological mother. She is his stepmother. So I want to explain the family tree really quick. There's a lot of divorces and kids involved, but it does play a part. So Dad Kane Horman was previously married to Desiree. While married, allegedly, Desiree was told that Kane had been cheating on her and she sought out a divorce. At the same time, though, Desiree found out she was pregnant and decided to try and make this work out. Desiree also had a son from a previous relationship, so she knew how challenging it was to, split custody and for kids to grow up in homes like that. Despite trying to make it work, Kane and Desiree filed for divorce when she was 8 months pregnant, citing irreconcilable differences. Kyron was born a month later on September 9th, 2002, in Portland, Oregon. Both Kane and Desiree shared custody, and things appeared to have been going well. Then, immediately after Kyron was born, Terry Moulton moved in with Kane. She also brought along her son from her first marriage. In 2004, Kane and Terry took over full custody of Kyron because Desiree was diagnosed with kidney failure. She had to move to Canada for a bit to get care from a certain specialty doctor. She was also in a lot of medical debt, so she made what I think is an honorable choice to give up temporary custody while she sorted all of that out. Desiree was still a very active mother despite the distance and medical issues. When she got back to Oregon, she had to move in with her parents 4 hours away, but Desiree, Kane, and the first baby daddy would still split custody on every other weekend, meeting halfway each time. Terry was also known to be a very good stepmother to Kyron, sending Desiree updates via email and really being his sole carer since Kane had a full-time job. Terry and Kane ended up getting married in 2007 and welcomed a daughter together in December of 2008. And we're going to get more into the family dynamic a bit later, but as you can see, we have several people involved. But now that we know that, let's go back to the morning of June 4th. So Dad Kane left the family home in Portland around 7:45 a.m. for work. Shortly after, Terry took Kyron to school with his little sister in tow. Like I said earlier, Kyron usually took the bus, but today the school was having a science fair and Kyron had a presentation on tree frogs to present. Terry decided it would be best to drive him to school in Kane's truck so the poster board would fit, and she could also walk around the fair with Kyron too. They arrived at Skyline Elementary School around 8, first stopping at Kyron's homeroom to drop off his backpack and coat at his desk. They stopped at the library and then went and talked to his teacher from the previous year. Next, they all headed to the gym where the science fair was being held. Kyron put up his poster, posed for pictures, and they all chatted with teachers, students, and other parents there. Around 8:45 a.m., Terry said bye to Kyron as classes were about to start. Okay, so reports will vary on what exactly the plan was. Some will say Kyron was going to go with another group of students to go look at more presentations on the second floor of the school. And then some reports say he was walking to class. But either way, this was the last time anyone reported seeing Kyron. After leaving the school, Terry, with baby in tow, headed off to run errands. She first stopped at a Fred Meyer grocery store about 9 minutes from the school. After this, she headed to a different Fred Meyer location 20 minutes away. According to Terry, the baby's pediatrician recommended a certain medication for the baby's earache, and the first store didn't have it. Thus, she went to the other location. And just a note, surveillance from both of these stores showed Terry and the baby there when she said she was there. And Terry also has a receipt from the second store where she did purchase the medicine. At the second store, Terry also ran into a woman she knew from the gym who corroborated chatting with her a bit. Terry showed her photos she had taken of Kyron at the science fair, and they talked about the baby. Right after this chat session, Terry dropped off some of Kane's dry cleaning at a laundromat in the same plaza, and then she headed into Michael's craft store. At this time, 10 a.m., Kyron was marked as absent by his teacher. So usually parents would get an automated alert, either via phone call or email, that their child was marked as absent from school. But like all the great true crime cases, the system was not working that day.
Of course it wasn't.
And like all the other great cases, the school did not have a single surveillance camera, even in 2010.
That's pretty odd for a school.
Very odd. Back to the timeline though, from approximately 10:10 to 11:39 a.m., Terry says she was driving around town trying to use the motion of driving to put the baby to sleep. From 11:39 to 12:20 p.m. ish, Terry worked out at her local gym in Beaverton. She also chatted with some more gym regulars there before heading home. By 1:21 p.m., Terry was back home and posted some photos of Kyron at the science fair on Facebook. She also emailed one of his teachers asking when the project needed to be picked up by, since she would have to use the truck to get it. Kane arrived home from work sometime between 2 and 3, depending on the report, but continued to work from home until they all headed out to the bus stop. So, like I said earlier, the system to notify parents if their child was absent was down, but Terry and Kane also weirdly got differing statements from staff at the school. They were told by a lot of the staff that they didn't remember seeing Kyron at all that day, not even at the science fair. But that's not super odd to me. There's like over 300 students there. There's parents, everyone
Yeah.
running around at the fair. You're not going to remember
And
everyone.
and we know he was there because there's pictures of him there. That's what you said, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
What is odd, though, is Kyron's teacher's statement. She marked him as absent at 10 a.m., but if you remember, Kyron's backpack and coat were at his desk because he dropped them off there before he went to the gym for the fair. So in June, there's like a week left of school. The teacher would know whose backpack is whose and, wonder why it was at the desk all day. The teacher was like, oh, well, Terry told me that she was taking Kyron to a doctor's appointment. She's like, well, I assumed he would be out for a bit and then come back after the appointment, but he was never dropped back off. And Terry knew this wasn't true, or at least partially true. She did talk to the teacher about the doctor's appointment, but she told her that it was next week. And she had even given her some forms to fill out for it. Investigators did later confirm all this with the doctor. By the way, the appointment was for the following week. Whether Terry said the appointment was for the next week or for that day, who's to say? While investigators are taking statements, they also start a ground search at both the school and at the Horman family home pretty much immediately. Alerts also went out to all the parents with students in Portland public schools. They later received an alert to come to the school for a debriefing a few days later and to provide statements. The ground search began at around 4:30 p.m., and with nothing located, the FBI was notified of the disappearance at 8:30 p.m. By June 7th, 3 different search teams were deployed. The FBI and the National Guard arrived, all helping the Portland Police Department and the county sheriff's office. Starting from the school and into the dense woods that surround it, grid searches were done over and over again. The same search was completed at the Horman's house. Deputies canvassed neighborhoods, knocking on doors and distributing flyers with volunteers from the community. FBI profilers from the Behavioral Analysis Unit began constructing a theory, and students and their parents were brought in for interviews. The search and investigation went on to be the largest and most expensive in Oregon history, with over 1,300 searchers from across the country and over $1 million spent on resources in just the first few months. But by June 7th, 2010, with nothing located, The sheriff escalated the case from a non criminal missing persons case to a missing endangered child case, making a big turn. After this announcement, the media and the public realized that investigators and dive teams were searching Sauvie Island. It's a big island, 24,000 acres, and it sits on the river between Portland and Vancouver, Washington. The island is also 6 miles away from the school, so that raised some questions. And when asked about it, investigators did not disclose why they were searching the island or what led them there. We later learned that while Terry was driving around trying to soothe the baby to sleep, she made a phone call, and this call pinged off the tower near the island. Then they released photos of glasses like the ones Kyron wore. The same day, a dive team was sent out to a pond near the Horman house. A few days later, the sheriff's office released a flyer of a truck asking for the public's help in identifying a person seen inside of it. The truck, a white Ford F-250, was the same truck Terry was driving that day. And according to investigators, they weren't looking for Terry's whereabouts, but they had two witnesses that separately reported seeing another adult person in the white truck that day.
Seems like they're looking for Terry.
It would appear so. The problem with honing in on Terry, though, is there's pretty definitive proof that Terry was alone at all the places she went to that day. I mean, besides the baby, there was no one with her at the grocery stores. No one walked into the gym with her, and no one sat in the car while she was running these errands. When she went to the laundromat, she parked right in front of it, like right at the door. And the people there, when asked about it, said, no, there definitely wasn't anyone waiting in the truck for Terry. The timeline of Terry's whereabouts was also pretty tight. She was going straight from store to store in minutes. I mean, besides the like driving around to put the baby to sleep, when she said she was at a store and left to go to another store, like very tight window. Another thing, or two other things, is the island they're searching doesn't make sense. Investigators say a phone call Terry made pinged off the tower that covered the island, but that tower just happened to cover a large area, including the island. There's no cell phone tower on the island itself. Secondly, there's one bridge to get on the island, and this bridge has cameras. No white Ford F-250 was spotted on the bridge at the time Terry was unaccounted for or between errands. The truck specifically was not on the bridge at all that day or in the days after. Still, investigators were hardcore set on Terry, and they brought her, Kane, and Desiree in for polygraphs. Terry failed two of them.
That doesn't look good.
And I know we always talk about how unreliable polygraphs are, but another point to bring up is the fact that Terry is deaf in one ear. She has brought this up as one of the factors in why she failed twice, just not being able to fully hear the questions properly. She has also brought up that a lot of the questions asked were very open-ended and vague, like, was Kyron with you in the truck? And she would answer, well, yeah, I dropped him off at school in the truck. Terry also said before each of these polygraphs were administered, she had been questioned by investigators for hours without breaks. So she wasn't exactly in the best headspace. She was also the one who asked for the second polygraph, thinking no way in hell I could have failed the first one. To me, at least, I wonder, why would a guilty person ask for another polygraph?
Yeah, like I would stray away from a polygraph at all costs if I was guilty. Also, she's probably just not in a good headspace. Like Kyron's missing. I don't know. I don't think I'd be in a good state of mind to do anything worthwhile.
So after this came out, Terry slipped out of view from the public, and Desiree and Kane were the ones appearing in the news. Any formal statement coming from the family no longer had Terry's name on the bottom, and it became pretty clear that a rift was forming. Now, this isn't the first time a rift has appeared, at least between Desiree and Terry. If you remember earlier, Desiree and Kane ended up getting divorced due to his alleged infidelities. Well, rumor was that Terry was the other woman.
I'd believe it.
Timeline makes sense. Kane and Terry do deny this. They're both pretty adamant that they did not meet until 2002 after the divorce had already been filed. But besides that, the relationship between Terry and Desiree was also just not the best. You know, Terry would send Desiree emails about Kyron and what he was up to, but Desiree took them as sort of like report cards and complaining about his behavior. We'll get into the behavior stuff later, but some of the emails also came off as critical of Desiree as a mother, saying things like, well, I couldn't work and I spent all of my savings to care for baby Kyron since his mom couldn't. And I'm the one who took him to the doctor to get glasses. I'm the one who took him to the dentist since no one else would. Things like that. 2 years after Kyron's disappearance, Desiree actually filed a federal lawsuit against Terry, claiming she was responsible, seeking $10 million in damages. A year later, Desiree voluntarily dropped the lawsuit, citing the fact that she didn't want to interfere with the criminal investigation. So, safe to say, Desiree was not a fan of Terry. And then Dad Kane, got some news, and he was no longer a fan of Terry. Late in June of 2010, so weeks within Kyron going missing, investigators sit down with Kane and tell him some shocking news. They had interviewed every family member and asked about suspicious people, and the only name Terry could come up with is Rodolfo Sanchez, their landscaper. Terry had explained that there was this odd encounter with Rodolfo, and the story varies depending on the source, but the gist is that Terry feared Rodolfo was going to sexually assault her. So investigators obviously go talk to Rodolfo, and they come to Kane and they were like, "Hey, did you know that Terry offered to pay Rodolfo a lot of money to kill you?" So, according to investigators, Rodolfo testified that in January of 2010, so 6 months before Kyron went missing, Terry approached him and offered him money to kill Kane because he was abusive. Side note, there's no evidence of him being physically abusive. I don't think Terry's even said anything to that sort. And of course, she denies this whole thing. But police did have Rodolfo wear a wire and meet with Terry to get some more evidence. He kept bringing up, like, hey, what's the plan? Like, when do you want me to do it? How do you want me to do it? How much are you going to pay me? And the entire time on the recording, Terry's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, not even being like, shh, don't say that. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Genuine shock. Yeah.
Just hearing about it was enough for Kane, and he immediately files for divorce and custody of their daughter, which I can't blame him. I get it. On the 26th of June, two 911 calls were made by Kane about a threat in a custody issue. The calls haven't been released, so there's not many details, but within 2 days, Kane had a restraining order against Terry. He then moved out of the house with their daughter while the divorce was pending, and Terry is granted supervised visitation. So I know this all looks bad, and this whole story may seem like I'm defending Terry. I'm not trying to. I'm just trying to raise some points. Devil's advocate. First point, Rodolfo barely speaks English. Okay? Terry knows zero Spanish. Then, when this whole hitman ordeal was brought in front of a judge, Rodolfo recanted everything. He told the judge point blank that the investigators told him to say all of that and wear the wire, or else they would deport him and his entire family.
Pretty convinced he's innocent.
So, no, we hear a lot of false confessions and false recanting of statements. I'm putting on my conspiracy hat. With the whole picture, it does look like investigators, at a minimum, are only focusing on Terry, and at a maximum, stretching evidence to put her behind bars for something. And I'm not saying this hitman story definitely didn't happen, but I can see how it didn't.
I'm having my doubts. Are they looking at anyone else other than Terry? Like, is there any random?
From what we know, no.
Okay.
The only information they've ever released has been about Terry, but I can't say like for certain they haven't looked anywhere else. The divorce of Kane and Terry was finalized on December 31st, 2013, and 8 months later, a judge denied Terry's request for a name change, citing the fact that she was a prime suspect in the disappearance of Kyron Horman. Little side note, police have never officially named her as a suspect. And we're jumping around a bit, but the search for Kyron is still ongoing. While ground searches were called off, the investigation is still very much alive. In 2012, DNA from Kyron's family members and his own from his toothbrush were submitted to all available databases for future comparison. Also entered into the databases were Kyron's dental records and x-rays. Meanwhile, grand jury hearings were being conducted, and it's been a minute since we talked about grand juries, but just to explain, they're held by the prosecutor. They bring all this evidence they have, they question witnesses in front of a jury, like a trial. But instead of saying, like, so and so is guilty of a charge, the grand jury is only tasked with saying, yes, there is enough evidence to charge someone with that crime, or there isn't. And grand juries are also confidential, so no media, no released transcripts. The public doesn't know what's going on in there. And even the like potential defendant whose the charges could be brought upon has no right to be there. So we don't know what happened in there, but basically everyone is subpoenaed to testify in front of the grand jury from all the parents, staff of the school, etc. And by December 2010, the grand jury had yet to come back with anything, saying there was no compelling evidence to bring an indictment against anyone brought forth so far. One of these people who was questioned and is constantly brought up online is Terry's friend Dee Dee. So the media has painted Dee Dee as like Terry's best friend, but when all this goes down, Dee Dee and Terry aren't really that close. They're more like gym acquaintances. But Dee Dee is the only one in Terry's life who like started checking in on her when all this stuff started going down. Terry had been pretty much shunned by everyone else. So their friendship really didn't start to grow until after Kane filed for divorce. And Dee Dee actually ended up temporarily moving in with Terry to help her out. So now Kane and Desiree are suspicious of Dee Dee in this relationship, saying Dee Dee had been, quote, providing Terry with support and advice that is not in the best interest of our son, end quote. And I don't know what they mean by that. They never expanded upon it or gave examples. The only thing I could find is that Dee Dee did help Terry buy a burner phone for Terry, for herself, and for like another friend, which is does look suspicious.
No, that's a little odd. Do you know when they bought the burner phone?
After the divorce had been like finalized, after the disappearance and everything.
Yeah, I mean that looks a little odd, but also if you know you're being looked at for something,
Yeah.
well, yeah, it does make even more suspicious, but I don't know.
I did read one report that they bought them because they thought they were being like wiretapped,
Yeah,
and then police wiretapped the burner phones. So apparently they can do that.
I didn't know they could wiretap a burner phone.
Hmm,
Why are they not doing that more often?
makes you wonder.
Yeah, I don't know. I could see that being innocent at the same time, but it does look very suspicious.
Another odd little thing came out, and when this hit the public, the theories went rampant. According to reports, on the day Kyron disappeared, Dee Dee was unaccounted for at work for up to 3 hours. According to her boss, when everyone was called in for lunch, Dee Dee never showed up and wasn't seen until hours later. She, of course, was questioned about this and was very adamant she never left the property. Dee Dee explained she was volunteering to set up an event at this 40-acre property. She was in the back corner by herself and she accidentally left her phone in the car. She also said she wasn't given a specific time to show up for lunch. It was the first time she had been invited, first time volunteer. She kind of took it as an open invitation. Dee Dee also said she did see another guy working out there and he would corroborate seeing her, but she couldn't remember his name and he was never located. Detectives looked into all this and talked to her boss, and it got fishier. Dee Dee wasn't volunteering for this event. She was a hired employee that had been working for this boss for a few months. So she knew when lunch was. Very odd thing to lie about. But after this, Dee Dee got an attorney, and Terry's own attorney advised her to cut all contact with Dee Dee, and they have not spoken since. So at this point, investigators are aware Terry doesn't have much of a window to do anything. Plus, there are the two witnesses who say they saw another adult in the truck with Terry, so they start assuming Dee Dee was an accomplice to whatever happened. They searched the property Dee Dee was working at for 3 days, but yet again, nothing was found. They go through all of Terry and Dee Dee's electronic information, and the two didn't speak to each other on June 4th. In fact, the last time they called, texted, emailed anything to each other was back in March when Dee Dee wished Terry a happy birthday. And that's not to say there wasn't any in person communication. They went to the same gym, that's how they knew each other. But there is one hole in this theory of Dee Dee being an accomplice is that 3 hour window when Dee Dee hadn't been seen was when Terry was accounted for on the surveillance footage at the stores and at the gym. There are counterpoints and counter theories to this online. One possible theory is that Terry did walk out of the school with Kyron that morning, incapacitated him in some way, and hid him in the truck while she ran those errands. We know there's no way Terry could have done this and disposed of him in the 9 minutes it took for her to get from the school to the first store. So maybe he was in the truck the whole time and was hidden later during the time Terry was just driving around. Or maybe he was handed off to Dee Dee or someone else. It's physically possible for sure, but I still have my doubts. One, we know of no reason why Terry would want to get rid of Kyron. Like, from everything I've seen, there's no, like, "Oh, he's not my kid, I'm gonna, like, treat him differently." Like, she
Right.
was the, like, sole caregiver to Kyron.
Yeah, what's the motive here?
I don't see one.
Yeah.
Secondly, Dee Dee and Terry weren't close whatsoever. Dee Dee's boyfriend has even said that when Kyron went missing and Dee Dee brought it up, he had never even heard of Terry. So, if Terry was, like, looking for an accomplice, I don't see how Dee Dee would be, like, your top choice to turn to. You barely know her.
Yeah.
There are, of course, other theories that would clear Terry of any involvement. The first being that Kyron Horman just walked out of that school that day on his own accord. According to Terry's attorney, three separate school employees did testify under oath that they saw Kyron after Terry had left. Another student told detectives that he saw Kyron near the south entrance of the school, alone, around 9 a.m. when everyone was walking to their classes. It may seem odd to think a 7-year-old would just walk out of the school, but this wouldn't be the first time. And it's not the first time for Kyron either, because on one occasion, his teacher had reported that he just walked out of class. They couldn't find him for a bit. He was just hiding in the bathroom. Another time, he went straight up missing from the school, and they found him hours later just hanging out on the soccer field.
Oh,
So it's not totally out of his character to just get up and leave, but to walk out and not come back, that's odd.
right.
If he did walk out, he had several hours to get pretty far, but tracking dogs and thousands of people searching have never found him or any of his belongings. Which brings us to the next set of theories. If it wasn't Terry, did Kyron walk out of school and encounter the wrong person? Was he lured out by someone else that isn't on our radars at all? So, as I'm sure we're all thinking, the school did not have top of the line security measures. Apparently, students can just walk out at any time. But this is especially true on the day of the 4th with the science fair and a talent show going on. There were big signs out front of the school advertising these events, and people did show up. I think there were around like 300 students enrolled in this school. I'm not sure how many staff, but they estimate there were over 500 people there that morning, like before 9 a.m.
So you have two events going on at this school, and you have people coming basically in and out, it sounds like all day or all of the school day.
Yes, and there was no sign-in sheets, no check-in process. It was just open house for all.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Also, I feel like that would, if I was going to skip class, that would be a good day to do it too, with so many things going on at school.
I didn't think about that. That is a good point. So with all that going on, it would have been very easy for a predator to just walk into that school that morning, grab or lure any child during the commotion, and just walk out. In an appearance on Dr. Phil in 2016, Terry said a tip came in about a man acting strange that day at a nearby 7-Eleven. According to Terry, a worker at the gas station called in the tip because the man was pacing back and forth in front of the station for about an hour. The tip also said the man got into a similar white Ford pickup truck. But this is the only information we have about this tip. It's just what Terry said on Dr. Phil. No investigator has commented on it. So take with that with what you will. But one last theory. Maybe this wasn't just a random perpetrator during a crime of opportunity. Maybe Kyron was specifically targeted. If you remember earlier, I mentioned that Kyron had been having some behavioral problems. According to all the parents, right before entering second grade, Kyron's behavior drastically changed. He went from being a chill, normal kid, no big issues at all, to all of a sudden having mood swings, nightmares, and wetting the bed. According to Terry, she had also caught him masturbating, and he was 7 years old at the time, mind you. So Kane and Desiree chalked this up to having divorced parents and going back and forth between their houses, but Terry believed that Kyron might have been getting molested.
Hmm.
She has also said that this is why she scheduled that doctor's appointment and she had his teacher fill out those behavior assessment forms because no one else was taking this issue seriously. They all thought she was making it up. Terry wasn't certain on it and she hasn't pointed fingers at anyone specifically, but she has said that this was something she thought of at the time and she just wanted to double check. But from what I could gather, Kyron, he wasn't in like on a baseball team or like in clubs or any like organization that would like keep him out of view of his parents for extended periods of time, other than just being at school. So some internet sleuths theorize it could be someone from the school. And with the school year ending soon, the perpetrator snapped at the thought of Kyron not being around. And another little fun fact, not, I mean, it's kind of related. The dad, Kane, his brother, Christian, was convicted of child molestation in 2008.
The dad's brother?
Yep.
That's interesting. I also just feel like just thinking about we know that a lot of times when kids go missing, it usually is like a parent or a step parent or even somebody that the child knows. But this just seems, it just doesn't make sense to me why Terry would let him go to school and then kidnap him from the school and do something to him. Like it would be so much easier to do that a different way. Does it make sense?
Yeah, like she would have had no idea that the like absent whatever alert system wasn't going to work that day.
Right. And maybe she knew that there was no cameras, but I mean, it just seems like such a happenstance thing that it would be so much harder for her to do something to Kyron, not letting him go to school. Like you're putting him in a public place and then you're going to kidnap him from there when he's at home all the time.
Yeah, and then like risk someone seeing you walk out the door with him,
Yeah.
500 people around, and
Yeah.
no one saw you walk out the door with him.
And I feel like a lot of times on the other side of that, like kids do get kidnapped by their parents in social settings, but I feel like that's more when the parent doesn't have access to the child. Like it's a, a situation where one parent doesn't have custody or can't see the kid and they come and, they're not able to have access at home to that child and they take them. I mean, not all the time, but it just seems like that's such a more intricate way to do something to a child that you see at home constantly.
Yeah, because Kane has a full-time job, like she has all day at home.
Right.
So millions have been spent, thousands have searched on the ground, and many more thousands of tips have come in. The case is not considered cold. It's actually still described as active and ongoing, with grand juries still being held. Desiree and Kane are still active in the search for their son and have started the Kyron Horman Foundation, which you can check out on thekhf.org. The foundation sponsors searches for missing children and provides resources for families. Terry has since remarried and moved out of the state. She denies any involvement and has stated that she has been advised by her attorneys and law enforcement to not speak about the case publicly. When this episode comes out, it will be 15 years since Kyron Richard Horman was last seen. He was last seen wearing a black t shirt with CSI written on it in green, black cargo pants, white socks, and black Skechers sneakers with orange trim. He was also wearing metal framed glasses. Kyron is white and he has a V shaped pink birthmark on his forehead. And at the time he disappeared, he was 3'8" and around 50 pounds. He also has brown hair and blue eyes. According to the KHF website, Kyron, like a lot of young boys, loved to do anything outdoors, like riding his bike, swimming, and mini golf. He loved toy cars, Legos, and going to car shows with his dad. On May 9th, 2025, investigators announced the case files are being reorganized, gone over again, and digitized. Once this is completed, all of the available information will be sent back to the FBI and the Behavioral Analysis Unit for further review. If you have any information about the disappearance of Kyron Horman or where he may be, you can call the County Sheriff's Office at 503-988-0560 or submit a tip online at tips.fbi.gov. And that was the story of Kyron Horman, a perplexing one. And everyone listening, let me know what you think. Do you think Terry was involved? That seems to be the big debate question.
This is a hard one because there's really no evidence to go on to say what we think who it is, you know?
No, and it's like the only person we have anything on is Terry. So obviously fingers are being pointed at Terry.
Yeah. But there's no motive, there's no real like evidence, you know? There's
Yeah.
no cameras that captured Terry with Kyron. There's nothing, there's no direct evidence, I guess.
And then if it's happened to be like a random predator and they spent all this time and resources like looking into Terry, we don't have anything on the whoever that may be.
Right. Dang, that's a frustrating case.
I'll be honest, if Terry did have something to do with it, I mean, I'm not gonna like go to bat with her like I did with like Karen Reed, but
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't see how it could be her.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that one. You never know, but it seems a little far-fetched to me.
And with that, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Over My Dead Pod. If you want more information about this case or all the other cases we've covered, which has been quite a lot, you can go to overmydeadpod.com or follow us on social media at overmydeadpod. And we will see you next week with another case. Bye.
Bye.